There's always something that I start this damn thing with. And this time, it was a muted microphone. Every single time. I'm actually pretty tech savvy. I blame Stigall. We're live here on a very rare long-form Larry Tuesday night, and I want to welcome you all for being here. If you're watching on YouTube, or you're watching on Facebook, or if you're watching through Twitter or on our locals page, thank you for being here. Now, if you have not yet joined our locals page, please do so. It's free to join. It's LarryO'Connor.locals.com. It's joining just like any other social media platform. You just join, sign up, and then you can see a lot of the stuff that we're doing. Now, yes, some of our live streams, we're doing like 2, 3, 4, sometimes. Well, no, not doing more than 4 a week of these live streams, special book interviews, special guest interviews. We're loading up a bunch of exclusive video that only you will see at our locals page. Some of it is behind a paywall. It's true. And if you want to join, and eventually all of these live streams will be locals only. And you won't see it on Facebook or YouTube until, a week after the fact. You want to be part of our live presentation, interact with us and everything. You want to join locals. And if you do want to be behind the paywall, use the codes that we've got here so you can join for free for a little while. If you're watching on YouTube, it's Larry YT. That's the code you want. Larry Young Thing. That was actually the working title of Michael Jackson's hit song from the Thriller album in the 80s. Larry Young Thing, LYT, Larry YT. They went a different direction. I don't begrudge them. I mean, I do begrudge Michael Jackson with some other life choices he made, but I don't want to get into that right now. If you're watching on Facebook, the code is Larry FB. Yeah, you already went there with me, didn't you? And if somehow you found us through Twitter, it's Larry TW. And if you're not watching at us at all, then the code is actually Larry FU, because who needs you? All right, that's all about that. Let's bring in our friend, our guest, our exciting sojourner, Chris. See, already you have a pain in the ass look on your face, Chris Stigall. Why? Are you going to start with me? Is that what you're going to do? Are you going to start with me?
Hi, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Is it?
Oh, I'm elated. Who chose the name Long Form Larry? Just out of curiosity, was that your decision or someone else's?
You always give me crap about this, and I think it's because you find it strangely and uncomfortably erotic.
Question. I just simply asked who came up with the working title Long Form Larry.
It was an important woman in my life. I'll leave it at that. Tread carefully, Stigall.
I am. This is where I respect your wife too much. Not you, but your wife.
I understand.
How are you?
And she respects you. I'm great. I'm so glad that you're, when we started to put together a list of ideas of what we wanted to do, and long form Larry is, of course, very long interviews. I think our first long form interview was something like over 2 hours, where we really get into things and sort of explore who you are and do the stuff that you can't do on radio. And you were in like the bottom 10 of the first 100 we put together as on our wish list. So I'm really glad we finally made our way down to you.
I'm a difficult booking, I know.
Oh.
I am giving up my Tuesday primary night in Pennsylvania for this.
Well, I was going to say, I mean,
night of the week.
First of all, you were originally scheduled for last Thursday, and you blew us off for Newsmax and Mercedes Schlapp. So it's okay. Let's not start with why we're doing this on a Tuesday.
I didn't blow you off, but I think now that you've started 20 minutes of the show without sound, we're pretty much even on the technical nonsense. Thank you so much.
Secondly, I'm a little off my game because
I tuned into a Charlie Chaplin film. Cling, 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 swinging a cane.
Nothing better. When we're in the live stream universe, it's just time to reinvent the good old-fashioned pantomime art form. I've always said.
That's right. We've gotten so hip.
That's
and
right.
So technically savvy. We've gone right back to silent film.
Everything new is old again, or something like that. Normally, as I said, we want to find out who you are, what motivates you, what got you where you are, what informs you, what's most important in your life, not even about radio or politics, about your family and your faith. We'd really dive deep in long form Larry. But tonight happens to be an extraordinarily important political event going on in your state of Pennsylvania, and you're sort of the go-to guest. I saw you were booked everywhere today. You were whoring yourself out talking about the Pennsylvania GOP primary there for Senate. And so I think we got to start. You know that you taught me everything I know, Chris, and you got to start with the news of the day. We got to get into breaking news. So tell me, how's that primary working out for you?
Well, as I shared with you this morning on your radio program, the analysis hasn't much changed. We're something like I don't know, the final hours. We're really, I guess, what is it now? It's 6 o'clock Eastern. We're like an hour away from the polling places closing, 7 or 8 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
I just don't know. People keep asking me to predict this, and it's a three-way tie, as of, if you believe current polls: Dr. Mehmet Oz, Kathy Barnett, and Dave McCormick. Any one of the three of them it could be. They're within plus or minus 4 points of one another. There are double-digit numbers of people undecided. And as such, I think I got emails today from people who said this, for instance: I really, really, really wanted to vote for Kathy Barnett, but I'm not confident she can get it done. So I decided to not.
They've spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks sort of planting that seed and well, fertilizing it by pouring a lot of shit all over it, the way you fertilize things. And
Yes.
I bet it has taken root a little bit. They had to stick a little nagging the level of doubt in there whether she can actually seal the deal if she were to win the nomination. But
Of course, the problem is cable news hosts in New York have really been irritating the hell out of Pennsylvania voters who don't much care for hairdos in New York City telling them how to vote in their primary. So I think that could equally work against their favored candidate, Dr. Oz, who I actually don't dislike at all. It's just I'm so tired of listening to the hairdos on cable news tell us why he's the only choice. I'm now starting to feel irritated, and I've tried really hard to not take a position in this.
now could we move straight ahead and get to which hairdo you're talking about? Now we've got a 9 p.m. hairdo. We've got a 10 p.m. hairdo who's been covering it quite a bit. The 8 p.m. hairdo hasn't been doing much on it, actually, but we'll get to the 8 p.m. hairdo a little later. I mean, be specific. Let's name names, Stigall. No one's watching.
No. Well, Sean Hannity is remarkably insufferable about it. I would care more about this guy on Newsmax, but nobody watches that really.
The former cop guy or the former Marine guy.
I've never seen such a self-important guy in my life as that point. I don't know him, honestly, and I'm not even being glib. Who knows me? Nobody knows me. I'm just saying I don't know who he is. He's been given a show on Newsmax, and now suddenly he thinks he can kind of flamethrow against the world. And I'm like, who? Like, I'll at least grant Sean, 30 years he's been doing this or something? He's one of the cornerstones of a major network. Okay, I'll give him his ego, but who the hell's the guy on Newsmax? Where did he earn the right? Exactly.
You know what it's reminding me of, strangely, actually, because I've been watching this from afar. Obviously, you're in the middle of it. You do mornings on 990 The Answer in Philadelphia every single day, and this is an incredibly big story, not just for the rest of the country, but certainly for the people of Pennsylvania. So I've just been watching it from afar. But when you talk about the hairdos sort of lecturing and wagging their finger and say, this is the way to go, it reminds me strangely of all of the pundits in 2016 who assured us that there was no way Donald Trump could win and that it's Hillary Clinton's. I mean, haven't we learned our lesson? Let's stop going on television and telling us either what we should do with our vote or what's going to happen with the vote. How about you just sort of illuminate, educate, present topics, present issues, present the candidates, and leave it to us?
Yes. Donald Trump was on the show this morning, and I said to him, Mr. President, if your selected endorsed candidates should not win tonight, will you support the winners? And he paused and he said, now I don't know if he means it or not. He seemed like he means it. He said, do you know that nobody's asked me that?
Wow.
And I was kind of stunned. Like I thought he was being glib or something. He said, I really appreciate being allowed to think on my feet a little bit. The answer is yes, he said. I'll gladly support anyone who wins tonight. No one's asked me that, Chris, he says. And what was so interesting to me about the question and his answer was that he had previously issued a statement about Oz and how he's enthusiastic and Kathy Barnett can't win. But should she? He said in his statement, but should she? She will be formidable and I will back her all the way and she'll be a great star and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, when he said that, I brought that up on a Newsmax hit. In fact, the night that I wasn't here with you, I said
certainly not Greg Kelly's show.
No.
Yeah.
But I said it to Mercedes Schlapp. And Mercedes didn't care for that at all. You could tell. Immediately she flew into, no, that's just a blah, 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 Oz. It's only Oz. And I was like, come on, Mercedes. Now, I mean, I don't know what this weird thing is that it's only Oz, only Oz, only Oz.
Hold on. I got to defend my friend Mercy.
Everyone on TV is all Oz all the time.
Hold on. I just spoke with Mercedes Schlapp like literally an hour ago because I'm doing her CPAC Now live stream show tomorrow.
I love Mercedes, but
I know you do. I know you do. I even asked her, I said, hey, what's going on in Pennsylvania? We're going to talk about that on the CPAC show tomorrow. Did you guys endorse anybody? She said, no, we stayed out of it. We haven't picked. So she hasn't. She's not on board with Oz.
I don't know. It's just like Newsmax is clearly like they've decided it's Oz, and Fox has decided it's Oz, and that's just it. And like, I don't know if that's for Trump. I don't know if they think it's great TV for them.
I think it's great TV. I think it's TV, and they like it TV stuff. So, well, hold on. Let me ask you this then. Do you? Because I got a lot to talk about, but I do want to button it up on the Pennsylvania Senate race. Do you have any early indication on turnout? Because I was seeing reports that in some precincts they were running out of ballots, that there were lines, and who do you think high turnout favors here?
It's Barnett.
Yeah,
my gut tells me that the Barnett and Mastriano turnout is going to be epic. Wow. I that's my gut. Now, I can also see a scenario where there are a bunch of people who at the 11th hour get nervous and buy into this notion that these two people can't win. Because that's all we hear is they can't win, they can't win, they can't win.
And then who do they turn to?
Then that's when they turn to Oz or McCormick, of course.
Right, but you don't know which. See, I have a hunch that McCormick's going to like sneak in on this.
He easily could. In fact, McCormick is like that safe choice. There's nothing flashy. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing. He reminds me very much of, and I think you said this, a vested guy who's now the governor of Virginia.
Right.
Not flashy,
like
not
Youngkin,
sexy, just
like young and a little like Romney. Even he's like, oh yeah, he's got the resume. He looks good on a By the way, you talk about how Fox is all in for Oz. This morning, we have Fox and Friends playing in the studio during the morning show. They had McCormick all over the thing.
Yep.
I found that to be a very interesting. I mean, it's almost like each show has their own little preference.
Look, I don't mind it. It's not like it makes me mad. I like if I had a show that was all in on a candidate, I'd just say so.
Yeah.
And say so. Just say it. Just tell your audience, look, here's why we're in for Oz. We think he's the only guy that can win.
Yeah.
I just think it's so unseemly that Sean has decided to just attack that. And I'll just say, because we're here and I'm going to be candid, it's a very bad look for the white Irishman of 30 years on cable news to be berating the black lady. Let's not do that, Sean. Let's not.
I don't think you're wrong. By the way, can you answer? I meant to sort of get this out of you this morning, and you always distract me and make me nervous when you come on my show, and so I apologize. It was all over the place.
I understand. It's you get nervous.
You're a CHRIS STIGALL. Kathy Barnett. Everyone says she's a political commentator, and I know that she has a history in the military and in the reserves. What else has she? And I don't mean this in a rude way. I'm just genuinely ignorant on this. What has she actually done?
Nothing.
Being a political commentator, as you know, is not a real job, right?
No, she's done what we do.
Yeah.
She's no more qualified to be a United States senator than you or I are.
Well, which is, by the way, constitutionally exactly qualified as any American citizen. So I'm not criticizing. I just genuinely didn't know if she had anything else that she had done.
If I may add, what makes Dr. Oz any more qualified?
Yeah.
He hosted a TV show, for God's sakes.
He's got an incredible head of hair.
He talked about your goiter and danced with Michelle Obama. Like, what makes him a senator?
Goiter.
I just like that word. I don't even know what it means.
Great word. It's a great word. You mentioned you had President Trump on the show today. Obviously, he's making the final pitch there. Great get, by the way. Fantastic. And I'm sure you got a heck of a lot of attention for. Did anything stand out to you, other than that moment where no one had asked him if he would support whoever wins the nomination? That's amazing. That's because everyone he does media with is like, wow, yeah, you endorsed him, so he's going to win, obviously.
Yes.
What else stood out to you in that interview?
Well, he's not fond of Mitch McConnell, and he made that abundantly clear. I asked him about Ukraine funding, actually, and he did not bite on that. But I asked him very specifically, you get involved in these races and you endorse. Talk to me about what makes it significant to you that a senator of your choosing wins. I led by saying Here's my thinking. You correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say Donald Trump wants to run again. Is it helpful to have a friend like Mehmet Oz as the United States Senator from Pennsylvania, because you need to win Pennsylvania to be the president?
Yeah.
To which Donald Trump confirmed immediately, well, yes, he would be very, very helpful and blah, blah, blah. So he's all but confirmed, again, in my sly, subtle way, that yes, that's exactly his calculation.
It's a very wise observation. I think you were the first one to raise it. Within 24 hours of the Trump endorsement, you were like, listen, this is about 24, and it does make sense. All right. Well, so any other? So we're just going to wait and see. And when do the polls close? 8:00.
8:00. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I honestly, I hate being coy. I think Doug Mastriano becomes the pick for the Republicans. I mean, every poll seems to suggest he's double digits ahead of everybody else. So I don't think it's so much a surprise for governor. But what's interesting, and I think I told you this, Doug Mastriano, who is Trump's endorsed candidate for governor, does not like Dr. Oz. He likes Kathy Barnett.
Yeah, I like that.
Which makes it very, very funny and interesting. And I wanted to ask Trump about that today, but I didn't. So I could see a scenario where you see a Mastriano Oz. I could see Mastriano Barnett. I could see Mastriano, what's his name? McCormick.
Yeah. Good old McCormick. I'm telling you, if I have to make a prediction, which I hate doing, I don't know why I have this sense that McCormick, who has not been getting a lot of attention, is actually going to sneak in because Oz and Barnett sort of split the same kind of vote.
I will tell you that there is tremendous between those two and the entirety of the Republican voter base. There is deep misgiving. That's the word. If I could sum it up for the two of them, there's deep misgivings.
Yeah.
There's the Cologne and cufflink misgivings for Kathy Barnett. There is the rabid MAGA base that absolutely doesn't trust Dr. Oz.
And Pennsylvania is a weird state with their Republican Senate choices. You went from Arlen Specter to Rick Santorum to Pat Toomey, and you couldn't pick three more different types of Republicans there. But they won the general when push came to shove. So
you know what Oz said to me today? I had Dr. Oz back on the show, and I said, look, let's just call this what it is. You're a popular TV guy. You've been on people's televisions for 15 years. You're pretty confident you can go into places like Philadelphia and win voters that nobody else can for the Republican Party, right? I mean, let's just be honest. And he said, sure. He didn't hide. I mean, he's like, I'm on people's TV. They like me. I'm Oprah's pal. He didn't say this, but I mean, it's just true. Like, he can walk through West Philadelphia and people are going to, black people, white people, Hispanic people are going to, hey, Dr. Oz.
This is the funny thing about Oz. One of his strengths in the general is the thing that makes Republican voters wary about
Precisely.
Him.
So well said.
It's an amazing.
He's got people keep asking me, who's got the best shot? Who's got the best shot? I said, well, it's a different question. Who's the easiest lift? Who's the path of least resistance? It's Oz by a lot. But does he have the passion? Does he have the voter trust? Does he have the base enthusiasm? No.
Yeah. But, this is a primary. And I always believe that by the time you get to the general, if it means this is why it's such a critical seat, because this is the one pretty much most vulnerable Republican flip for Democrats. That you can argue Ron Johnson might be a tough one in Wisconsin, but they say that each time Ron Johnson's been up, they've said there's no chance, he has no chance, and he wins. So honestly, I think this is the most vulnerable seat because it's not an incumbent Republican running for re-election. It's a flip, as you know, with Toomey going out. So
yeah, and Toomey won it by a whisker the last time, and knew he wasn't going to come back. I mean, he voted to impeach Trump, for heaven's sakes. So that's another interesting thing is, you've got Republicans that I've been making them all comment on Pat Toomey, which has been hilarious. Because they're trying not to trash the outgoing Republican senator, but at the same time, they can't love up on him.
Sharon Cabana says in our comments here, and if you want to comment, go ahead. We'll try to put them in when they're relevant. She says, I heard on Twitter from Ann Coulter that Barnett is an unknown, Oz is not trusted, but she cast her vote for Barnett, I think. Well, that would be interesting since I don't think she votes in Pennsylvania, but but she's supporting Barnett. I don't know who she would be supporting, but it is sort of, it's funny how it's dividing the Republican commentariat. You
know what it is. Look, you're on the radio in Virginia and Maryland and the DC area every day, but specifically Virginia and Maryland. You know what it is? It's like me doing my show in Pennsylvania every day, and then coming in and saying, "What the hell? Who's this Winsome Sears, Larry? Who is this woman? Where did she come from?" And naturally, you would say, "Well, we've been here talking about her all along."
Yes.
But I'm oddly in Pennsylvania, where we don't talk about Winsome Sears. So, like, I don't know why all these national pundits are dismissing Kathy. Like, who the hell is this woman? It's like, chill. I mean, I've been interviewing her for 2 years.
Yeah, literally.
Like, my audience knows her well. I know her well. Have I vetted every scintilla of her background? No, but like, you can't like drop in from New York or California and go, I haven't vetted this woman. Who is she? Who the hell are Pennsylvania voters to vote for her? It's like, you don't live here, dude. Settle down.
Don't you know who I am?
Oh, I'm from Malibu. The hell? Get out.
So, as the evening progresses, I'm hoping that it's just going to be like a typical night that Larry and Chris are hanging out, and you just get to watch. And this is a signature move.
I'm from Philadelphia.
I'm very loud because I'm in a top 10 market.
You want to tell people what that is?
I will in a moment.
Okay.
We're done with Pennsylvania Senator race. We'll find out tonight or tomorrow morning, or maybe in a month, who actually won it. Ethan Butler says, "My mom makes me listen to you every day," which thank you, Ethan's mom. Yeah, I do like to make me. But Ethan, you got to be specific. Yeah, who are you talking about, Ethan? Is it me or Stigall? Because it's a common denominator. I'll be honest. We're very big with the moms.
That's right, and mothers who force their young to listen. That's abusive. Mommy dearest, no wire hangers and listen to Larry.
By the way, you mentioned your interview with Donald Trump, and of course, I popped up your podcast this morning, the Great Chris Stigall Show podcast, which is terrific and very, very popular and does very well. And I said I want to hear the Donald Trump interview. Imagine my surprise when I found out, unbeknownst to me, and certainly without my clearance or permission, that I was on your podcast this morning.
You're welcome.
Well, but no, that's not exactly the tone in my voice. Do I sound grateful? Do I sound like I'm thanking you for taking my content against my will and blasting it on your little rinky-dink podcast, which is terrific, and everyone should subscribe? But really, without even letting me know?
I've spoken with Mary Berner about it, and she was fine.
Oh, well, there's a ringing endorsement. Thanks for that.
We're on a first-name basis.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh,
she sends notes frequently.
We're on a name basis.
Mary knows both of us.
Get me Phil Boyce. All right.
We work for people who don't care for us is the joke.
But the money's good. The check cashes, doesn't it?
That's right.
I would actually rather work for somebody who detests what I do. In some way, it actually feels better.
Say that again.
I'd rather work for somebody who actually detests what I do. In a weird way, there's some satisfaction to that.
Oh, Well, it's you know what it's a bit like Mr. Shirley in Christmas Vacation. Get me somebody, anybody. Get me somebody while I'm waiting. Nice work, greaseball. It's that, isn't it?
It is.
None of that layman stuff. None of that jargon BS. You know.
So do I just need to expect now that every time I allow you to be heard in a major city like Washington, D.C. on my program, that I'm then going to suddenly pop up indiscriminately on your podcast later in the day? Because I felt violated. I felt a little taken advantage of. I'm not going to lie.
I'm trying to expand your audience, Larry.
That's why I called you, by the way. You sent me to voicemail.
I was doing another show.
You weren't on yet. I got you at the news break.
I was on in Kansas City.
It was dead at the top of the hour. You had 4 minutes till you were on.
I will look the timestamp up right
now. It was 11 o'clock Central when I called you. I remember vividly.
Let's just see. Searching recent.
You know, I can do this too.
Larry O'Connor, 11:02 a.m.
All right, so you had 2.5 minutes before you were on.
What do you do during breaks? Or do
you
I
don't
want
wanna
to know?
You don't wanna know the answer to that question. Right.
That's why he
You
has multiple women rotating out every day
Wait,
with
be
him in the
specific.
studio.
You mean on the air as co-hosts? I don't
Either. Meredith?
Sharon on Locals says, in our Locals chat, "What is wrong with Hannity? Why was he so in on Oz? Oh my gosh, normal people do not like Oz. Maybe TV hairdos do."
No, look,
She
here's
said
the thing.
do.
I don't think it's any more complicated than this. Donald Trump endorsed him. Sean is great friends with Oz, and that's fine. That's fine. But why do you have to rip a woman to shreds?
Yeah.
Just be for Oz. Don't take this admonishing tone with your viewers. Like if they don't see it your way, you're disappointed in them. I don't mind that he's friends with Oz and wants his friend to be senator. Doesn't bother me at all. But just stick to that.
You know, would you like my I mean, again, you know this better than I do, but my analysis as to why Donald Trump endorsed Dr. Oz in the long run, because everyone's asking that. When we were down in Mar-a-Lago, not that we ever actually got into Mar-a-Lago, but that's a whole other story that you can see on the video.
I'm
that
from
we did
Washington, D.C. Yeah, so's everybody else, pal.
Yeah, right. Don't you know? Don't you know what zip code I'm from?
I love that the entire city of Washington is down there and everyone gets in but you.
Great moment. So if you want the backstory of that, see the video that we did last week when Chris stood us up. I ended up telling that story for a good hour in our live stream. Thanks,
I
Chris.
lost internet and I got locked out of my Mac because of this show. I want you to know that. In a fevered frenzy to get logged in, I locked myself out of my new Mac.
So so again, you know this stuff better than I do, but I think when we were down there, we did have lunch with one of the comms guys, the person who does comms for Trump now, and he says, "So how's the Oz thing going over?" You know, because they know this is like
yes. I mean, again, he goes up in a farm field for Oz, and everyone's like, "Trump, yay, MAGA!" And now here's Dr. Oz. Boo! Right. I mean, Trump. Yes, Trump knows.
So after talking for a while and sort of analyzing this, I've come to a conclusion. This is why why did Trump endorse Oz? Here's why. Because the two most important people in his life, the two people that he has a physical relationship with, who make out with him, who practically, sexually gratifying on a nightly basis, they both love Dr. Oz. And of course, I'm talking about Melania and Sean Hannity. And so I think to please those two, he had to go ahead and acquiesce.
You've gone far more aggressive on Sean than I. I thought I was being pretty tough, and you went full-blown sexual relationship.
I'm speaking metaphorically, euphemistically. Merely an allegory. It's allegorical.
Well, I don't know about that, but I can't confirm that. I'm afraid I'll leave.
Well, I don't know about that. I've never actually seen Sean get down on his knees.
I am not gay. I never have been gay.
Well, there's our promo clip right there. We've got our.
Can you believe a United States senator said that in a press conference once? I am not gay. I never have been gay.
But I'm leaving the door open in the future. They dress really well.
And I got a wide stance.
Mikey,
I'm a fairly wide guy, he said.
Mikey watching our stream on Facebook says, Trump is my guy, but does no one remember when some of the nation's top physicians called Oz out as a quack? That could explain some of the pushback. Oh, that's part of it. Yeah, that's true, Mikey. Listen, we'll see what happens. There's nothing worse than two political analysts just sitting there for hours and hours talking about what is really in the hands of the voters. None of it matters. We'll see what happens, and then we'll talk about it after the fact, which is really what we're paid for.
I feel very good that I didn't. Honestly, and I meant this. My commitment going in to this primary and covering this primary was that I was not going to do what Sean is doing. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to, like, any one of these people could win. I saw how any one of them could. I treated every one of them with respect, I'd like to think. And for months, I've hosted every one of them up and down the line. In fact, on social media. I did Facebook Lives there were, I think at one point, 16 people running for two different
seats.
seats.
I saw that. It was fantastic yeoman's work, actually. It was
I spent
great.
Monday nights for weeks talking to every single one of them and taking live listener questions. So I wanted to give everyone a shot. Somebody has to win. Who am I to say who?
So now let's talk about this, because this is why I really want to get into who we are, how we met, what our friendship is. And by the way, I have to say, I love that we have this really hostile relationship on social media, and then because people, I don't know, do you ever get direct messages from? I get DMs from people saying, "Wow, why do you hate that Chris guy so much?" And people who don't get it, they don't realize that we are literally the best friends in the world.
Right. That's right. Yeah, no, I'll get those messages, particularly from your side of things. Why are you so mean to Larry?
That's right. Well, you are pretty mean to me.
It's like, well, wait, did you hear what he said to me? The bit is he volleys and then I spike it back. That's the bit.
It's fantastic.
Somehow they don't hear you ever being mean.
I love that. When did this happen? Because it did. We've known each other. We're friends like for 10 years now, I want to say. Maybe a little more, actually a little more than that. But something evolved. Some hostility, this pretend hostility involved, and it's just fantastic.
Well, it's the wonderful thing about you and I is I think we're modest enough to understand the fragility of the ego in this business. And while we have egos, I think we also love to play on the fact that we have fragile egos and acknowledge it. And so so the joke is we puff ourselves up to such a degree that we're vicious.
Right.
As if to pretend we don't have the most delicate and fragile of egos.
It's you know what it is? It's the Ted Baxter thing.
That's exactly
that's what it is. We're playing a Ted Baxter thing.
That's right.
Where you have to do it, and that's where the humor is. And the reason it's funny is because we know way too many people in this business where it would be genuine.
Who might be hosting a Newsmax show, for instance.
It would be a real thing. So no, that is very sweet. But you just now this is, and I do. It's like we never directly. I shouldn't do this in a plural. You never directly mentored me and sort of groomed me for. I'm sorry for using that word in these days. But sort of gave me direct guidance on how to do what we do. And by the way, I don't think anybody can. You either do it or you don't, and you learn things. But I love the fact that we have both ended up sort of approaching the political analysis in a very similar way, not in terms of what we believe, but of how we approach our job. And I'll take it back to what you just said about your approach to this primary, that your function here is not to lecture your listeners on what they should think and how they should vote. Your service that you're providing is, listen, I'm going to do what you can't do. I'm going to ask these guys questions. I'm going to give them time. I'm going to challenge them. And then I respect you enough to decide. Why isn't that the norm? Why isn't that sort of the standard way people who do what we do what we do?
I think this business evolved into some kind of, and I don't misunderstand this as me blaming, because I'm not blaming. There was an original GOAT who became a fantastic star at being a prognosticator, and that was Rush Limbaugh. Now, prognosticator is different than a lecturer or something like that. And so Rush made a career out of I told you so. That's literally his book. He would play, here's what I said last year at this time, or remember when I said this 2 weeks ago, and he plays the clip.
Yeah.
Rush, I think, built such a substantial talk radio career off of, I was right. You see what I predicted? It came true. And so the business model became, I got to be the guy who's smart and in front of it and tells people what's coming, is what I think.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of became this monster of a notion that now it's, I predict, I call it, I see it. I'm the Nostradamus of everything politics. And sometimes, and like it became almost a weakness when you'd say, I don't know. And one of the things in politics that I was taught, I worked in Congress for a very brief window. And I remember once I was working for this congressman, and a guy came up to me at an event and asked me a question on behalf of the congressman, some position or something. How does he feel about XYZ? And I had no idea. I was a young kid, and I just made it up. I just went, well, I think he's fully in support of XYZ, and you can expect blah, blah,
Ooh.
blah.
Ooh.
Well, it turned out he wasn't in full support of the XYZ, and it got back to the chief of staff, who called me and berated me. I mean, screamed bloody murder at me over the phone and said, how dare you speak for the congressman? Who the hell do you think you are? And I said, I'm just so sorry. I didn't want to look ill-informed and stupid. And he said, and do you know the trouble you've caused? All you had to say, all you ever have to say is, I don't know, but I'll find the answer and get back to you. That's all.
And it's so simple. Yeah.
It is. And that stuck with me, Larry, for the rest of my life. And that's been the principle I've operated with on the radio. Whether it's a candidate or whether it's a subject, I'm not afraid to just say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, rather than try to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I do love that that you approach this the same way. We had a hotly contested primary in Virginia, as you alluded to, for the governor's race. It's funny, at the time, Youngkin was not really everybody's first choice. I think when I did the same thing that you're doing. I took calls. I mean, oh yeah, you can't. Youngkin's no good, and I like this one or I like that one. We had like 7 different candidates, and we gave them all a lot of time.
Yep.
And now in retrospect, it's like, well, of course it was Youngkin. I mean, it is like, why was this even in doubt during the primary?
Little political nugget, just as an aside.
Yeah.
That guy who I was working for that yelled at me,
yeah,
ran the Glenn Youngkin campaign.
Oh, that's amazing! What
and is running the Dave McCormick for Senate campaign in Pennsylvania at this hour.
Very similar types. Oh, and I know people who work on both campaigns in the comms departments. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we have another race here. 10th congressional district of Virginia. They're having their primary this Saturday. It's the same situation. There's tons of candidates. All of them are great. And this is a hotly contested one because this had been Republican forever. It's been Democrat, I think, for 4 years now, maybe 6 years. And this is where Loudoun County is. So all that attention on the Loudoun County school system and all that stuff is a huge part of this race. So
is Virginia changing, like, for real, or is that just an aberration?
I don't know. I can't tell. I can't tell if it's I mean, this is how it's been historically, is that they swing back and forth between Republican and Democrat. It's just since Obama, there was sort of a string of, 6, 8 years of statewide races that went the Democrats' ways. But it wasn't until 2 years ago that they actually got the majority in the state, in the House of Delegates, in the state legislature. So, I mean, there's still a strong Republican presence.
I just found the audacity of Terry McAuliffe running again.
I know,
just
the arrogance.
That's the word. It was audacious to even do it.
Yeah.
It's like, go home.
I know.
Just
it's the arrogance of power, right?
Yes.
So let's go back. Let's go back a little bit, let's go back a long way, and then we'll work our way up to where we are here. But
I was the son of a sharecropper.
So as almost everybody knows, this is a second career for me. I had a completely different life before I started doing this. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but since a very early age, you knew that you were going to be on the radio. Yeah, at the time, talk radio wasn't necessarily what you wanted to aim for, but you just knew you loved this and had such a passion for it that you couldn't imagine doing anything else. Am I right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I not talk radio. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't even know what talk radio was. Here's my first earliest memory. 4th grade. I remember in 4th grade, my parents getting ready for work. My mother was, sitting down at her vanity, putting on her makeup. And I remember my dad shaving. And on the radio was this guy called Randy Miller, who was the #1 morning show guy in Kansas City, where I was growing up. And I remember both of them listening to him pretty loudly on the radio in their bedroom and just laughing. And I remember riding into school or riding with them to work and listening to this guy on the radio and laughing. And I thought, oh, well, now I know as an adult what I was seeing was an intimacy there that I thought, oh, well, that who doesn't want to be the guy making people laugh as they're getting ready for their day? It immediately, I fell in love with it. So yeah, it was always I was in love with it from my earliest memories.
And you started doing music radio, right?
Yep.
You went to college. You went to actually got a broadcast. What was the actual degree? Is it broadcast journalism or broadcasting or?
Yeah, broadcasting is, I think, which is silly. I mean, it seems so silly to say, but yeah, it was actually a Bachelor of Science in broadcasting with a minor in journalism.
From Southwest Missouri State, is that right?
Northwest
Missouri State.
Very
Which,
near
by the
the
way,
Iowa border.
incredibly famous list of alums, broadcast professionals coming out of there, right? Very, very, very powerful
and influential. Don't forget influential.
Very influential. They could crush you.
18 million people. That's right.
Crush you if you
say your name and ruin your life.
You come out against me. You don't do it, and you bend to my will, or I will destroy you.
Or at least get mildly drunk at a tailgate, and have strong words for you on a Saturday in the fall.
Let's not. I don't need emails. Okay, let's just stop. I have dodged this bullet, so I'd like to just.
There may be literal bullets if we're not careful. That's the fear, actually.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So
I speaks the truth.
So you graduate and with top honors, I understand, and you were celebrated.
That's right. Yeah, there's a statue in my honor there now, I think. Yeah.
And you go right. This is Northwest Missouri State. And so now, did you assume that you were gonna? Because almost everybody in radio, when I got an agent and it was like time to try to get a job, they said, "Okay, we'll be ready to move." Because you're going to have to travel the country and go from little market to bigger market to bigger market to bigger market. But you actually ended up, you were right there in Kansas City, right? You never had to move around or anything.
That's right. Only because I had been interning that entire time. I don't want to bore this audience with this backstory, but
they're here because they love radio. So really, this is fun stuff.
This is the story of this guy, Randy Miller, that I told you since a kid. I number one hilarious morning wacky FM DJ guy.
Yeah.
Playing pranks, doing parody songs. I mean, it was like the golden age of late 80s, 90s classic FM morning radio. And he was just a stud of a guy, and still is. I mean, he's still a very funny man. I, in high school, was interviewed by a local television news anchor who does this segment called Reaching for Excellence. Okay. So it's the TV news anchor. One of the beloved big three TV news anchors does this. Let's sit down with a student who's doing great things, And
Ron Burgundy situation.
That's exactly right. They're on one of the Ron Burgundys of Kansas City. And he comes to my school and he sits down and he's profiling me because I'm very active. And I had a run of, I guess, decent success in high school in competitive, what's called forensics, and not the carving up of dead bodies, but that's performance. Yes. Everybody thinks, people that don't know forensics think, ew, that's weird. You went to state carving up dead people? No, it's performance, comedy, duets.
Sure.
So I made it to nationals and so because of that, they did a profile on me. Somebody told him about me. He came out and he said, "So what do you want to do with yourself?" I got that. "What do you want to do when you grow up, young lad?" And I said, "I just love Randy Miller. I want to do what Randy Miller does."
Wow.
And he aired this on local television in Kansas City. The next morning, I wake up to my alarm clock and Randy Miller, as I always did every day, and Randy Miller plays the audio of me on TV talking about him and says, "I don't know who this guy is, but if he's listening, call me right now."
No way.
So this is my boyhood hero that I've listened to for years, saying my name, saw the piece, or somebody told him about the piece on TV,
right,
calls my name out on the radio. I call him up. "This is CHRIS STIGALL. Randy Miller, it's me." And he says, "I tell you what, why don't you come down here he said, "What are you doing on the 4th of July? And I said, I mean, nothing, whatever you want. I don't know." And he says, "Well, I'm going on vacation, so why don't you come down here and fill in for me?" But I don't know anything about.
Which, by the way, is exactly how I get my fill-in host today. I just now they.
But it was all very sweet, actually, when I think back to it.
No, it is. What a guy. That's amazing.
Yeah, so they have this guy, run the board and help me actually do it. But the instructions were very explicit. His entire team was intact.
Yeah.
Except him. He took the day off. Everyone else on his morning team, his producer, board op, his newswoman, they were all there, and he gave them all express direction that they were to help me create the show that I wanted to do. And so I got to write bits. I got to do all the intro and outros of songs. And I interviewed a guy, and this is not a joke. I interviewed a guy who was coming through Kansas City performing that 4th of July holiday weekend. Nobody'd heard of before, called Kenny Chesney.
No, that's amazing.
100% true.
Wow.
So I have a photo of me and Kenny Chesney both with hair.
And I was going to ask you, were you completely bald at this time because you're a teenager?
No. I'm a kid. I'm a junior in high school at that point.
Okay, so only the receding hairline then.
I had a fantastic head of hair. You need to see some of my hair was anchor ready. I mean, I looked good. But at any rate, yeah. So I met Randy under those conditions, and that was back before there were laws on interning. And you could just walk in off the street and go, "I'll do whatever you want for free."
Full-time exploitation. It's brilliant.
That's right.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I started interning right away, writing things for him, doing voices for him, fetching coffee, whatever he wanted, when I was free and when I could. I did that through college, and so by the time I got out of college, in fact, he called me my sophomore year and said, I want you to come down and produce the morning show. I was a sophomore in college, and I called my dad and I go, I'm quitting college. I'm out. Randy wants me to produce for him. I quit.
It'll never get better than this.
Never. 20 grand, baby. $20,000 they offered me, and I wanted to quit. And my dad blew his stack, and he said, I forbid it. But no, that ended up working out, and I got an overnight show on the station that Randy worked, and the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
But again, this was music radio. And by the way, for everybody who's like, why would you even entertain being a producer? Jimmy Kimmel was the producer of a morning radio show, unknown then at the time, Kevin and Bean in L.A. So there's a long list of very talented former radio.
But you know this better than anybody. When you really admire someone who's talented, you just want to be in their orbit, and you don't care you'd be their wardrobe consultant if that's what it took. You just want to be around it. It's not even about being on the air. You just want to be that close to somebody that's that talented.
My first job in theater, I was a mail. It was pre-email, right? I was a mail runner. My job was to move all the inner office mail and memos and tickets from the box offices to the executive suites. I didn't care. I was working on Broadway, right?
I don't think I ever asked you this. Was your intention to stay in theater?
You mean by the time I ended up flipping to this career?
Yeah, I mean, before you did you always think, well, I'm just going to make a living in theater?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I did. And it wasn't until I saw a path for something else that I sort of decided to take this leap. It was weird. I jokingly say that I was having an early midlife crisis, and instead of getting a Corvette, I got a radio show.
What would you have done though? Like, walk me out. I've never asked you this. I don't know why. I guess because I'm too fascinated with myself.
Yeah, pretty much. He's incredibly megalomaniac. Honestly,
what does
so narcissistic?
Honestly, what does a theater career look like? Short of the obvious things we know, like singing and dancing and starring on Broadway, like what is a real lasting career in theater besides that? Because you weren't a stage guy, were you?
No, I was in management. I was in production, and I was in management. I was at a crossroads because the theater, I was general managing the Schubert Theater in Los Angeles. It was a big 2,200 seat big musical house in LA. We had the world premiere the American premiere of Sunset Boulevard with Glenn Close before it went to Broadway. We had Ragtime. We had Cat Beauty and the Beast. Oh God, yeah. I worked with Glenn Close. I worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber for like 3 months when he was launching the show. But what ended up happening, and I was the general manager, so I represented the theater owners' interests with the stagehands union, the ushers union, with the rental. The producer, the show would rent the theater, so I was sort of acting as the manager for the owner of the theater, and I would make sure the contract was upheld. We dealt with box office receipts. It was a labor, customer relations, and finance.
There's a whole theater side, literal physical structure theater side of the business that has nothing to do with the people that put on the shows inside the
correct
theater.
They're basically landlord. Their job is they rent out the space, and then they have to hire everyone to execute the evening's extravaganza except for the actors and a small handful of the stagehands and technicians. But like all the musicians were on my payroll. All the wardrobe people were on my. We hire from the local unions, and they actually work for me on behalf of the show or my
So
company.
is that always the case, or the
Pretty
show?
much. That's the structure. That's the structure of a commercial theater. Now, if you go to
So
a nonprofit theater, it's a little different.
I go see Les Mis on Broadway. The
Yeah,
people that own the theater are paying for the musicians,
correct. They're on
not not the, not the show people, not the
yeah.
production.
There's usually like in Les Mis, I think there's something like 23 musicians in the pit. I would say probably 3 of them work for for the show itself. The conductor, maybe the lead violinist, maybe the lead keyboards, and that's about it. And
Well,
certainly
that's
with a touring show, they take, generally speaking, a musical will take 4 touring musicians with them, and then they pick up all the other musicians locally, every city they go to. And they
I
generally have like 2 rehearsals before they have an audience. It's amazing.
man, but that seems as a business model, like if the show flops, that's a lot of buy-in from a theater, isn't it?
Oh, no, no, no. So everything's guaranteed against the producer's receipts. So the theater owner never loses money. Never.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So it's
and
a guarantee you don't lose money as a theater owner.
Correct. The producer must cover everything. They post a bond. They post a bond to cover the expenses of the show of the theater for a good 2 to 4 weeks usually, in case anything happens. Also, the other thing the theater owner gets to do, you often hear about a show having this show Hamilton has a $50 million advance sale, right?
Mhm.
Which means people have purchased tickets for the next year totaling $50 million worth of income. The theater owner is the one who's selling those tickets. So they're sitting on $50 million.
Oh.
And the producer does not get access to that money until the actual performances.
And the theater would keep it no matter?
Well, no, no, no. If the show closes, everybody gets refunded, certainly.
Okay, yeah.
But but I guess what I'm saying is, if I gave you $50 million and I told you, okay, so I want you to divvy this out to me $500,000 per week for the next, 100 weeks, you'd probably make quite a bit of money in interest on that $50 million while you're doing it, wouldn't you?
That's
And
right.
that's over and above the rent I get paid and all. Yeah, theater owners do very well.
The plot of The Producers then, the classic Mel Brooks
Yes.
film and
Which is a
play.
very, very, very realistic thing.
Well,
Actually.
like that's a hilarious film and play, and the prospect is that these guys are scamming investors in a show.
Right.
They're trying to create a flop of a show so
Right.
that they can take people's money and not be out.
Right, because nobody ever audits a flop because nobody's expecting to make any money back on a flop, right? They're not going to sick an investor saying, you make sure that, I got my share because there's nothing to be had.
Yeah.
So if the show is budgeted at $1 million, but they actually take in investments worth $10 million and the show flops, they just keep all the money.
Wow.
That's what the producers are all about. The only thing that could make it go wrong is if the show was a hit, because then everybody's expecting a distribution on their investment. It's honestly
a lot like radio, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, that's
fascinating. I don't think I really understood that about you. You were an
so
theater administration. I don't think I knew that.
And I was at a crossroads because the theater that I was managing in Los Angeles had closed. They actually tore down the building to build a new building for the super agent CAA. So that's that's much more.
I thought you were about to say a Super 8.
That too. Sure, a Super 8. No.
They tore it down for a Super 8.
That'd be rough.
Really
That'd be
that's
rough.
what you're about to say. Yeah, no, I mean, I would think the only flaw in managing a theater is if they tear down the theater.
Yeah, which is what they did. And I had and at the time, my company that owned that I worked for, Schubert, they offered me a job in New York. I had already started my family. I had 2 kids at that time. Ended up with 4, of course. It wasn't in the cards to move to New York at that time. So I ended up being an independent general manager. So then it's sort of I switched hats. There's 2 general managers in a production, the general manager of the theater who looks out for the theater's interests, and then there's a general manager for the producer. Producer has their own payroll, their own staff, mostly creatives, directors, designers, actors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I was hired by several producers in Los Angeles to look out for their producing shows on a smaller scale for the most part. But I was also hired often by agents, writers in the film business, because they had plays that they wanted to workshop or maybe do a backers audition or a reading of, and they had pretty good budgets because it was Hollywood, and it was just sort of a hobby and a lark. And I was one of the few people in LA that actually knew the nuts and bolts of commercial theater, because most anybody who has a career in commercial theater is, of course, in New York. So I was able to actually make a pretty good living for several years doing that.
I mean, there is no, so live theater is not a thing in LA at all, really?
Oh, no, it is. It's just on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
And it's and much of it is nonprofit theater, institutional theater, which is a very different animal. And I pretty much worked in commercial theater for the most part. But I was definitely at a crossroads. I was either going to keep doing that, and the way you make money doing that is you work on multiple shows at a time, and it's very feast or famine. It's sort of freelancing. Or I would have to move to New York and pursue the business there. But yeah, I would move to New York. I would work for producers. I would work for theater owners, and I would still be doing what was doing since I was 22 years old.
Now you still are a theater aficionado. You like theater. I mean, you
funny,
enjoy
I
going to see shows.
do, but not as much as I used to. It's fun. Hey, who's interviewing you here, son of a gun? Stop it! I see what you've done. I see exactly what you've done. I'm not going to answer your question. You have me on your show. I'll answer you. Let's have long.
You were very upset with Patty LuPone.
I will tell you one more theater thing, and then we're going to get back to you.
I knew it.
My daughter, who is graduating from UCLA next month with a theater.
See, people, it's like catnip to him. You say theater, and he brings out the feather boa, and just starts going. Jazz hands are coming soon. There they are.
My daughter is going to be a production stage manager, which is different than what I did, but it is a management position in the commercial theater, or live theater, I should say. She got an internship, or not an internship. She actually got a job at the Public Theater for 2.5 weeks in New York, even before her graduation. She doesn't graduate until next month, but she was in New York. So Meredith and I drove up to see her in New York when I took her out to dinner. And we were in New York for from Friday mid-afternoon through Saturday night. And it's like I probably the first time I've gone to New York and I actually didn't see a show.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. And I thought about it. And I'll be honest with you, bringing it back to what you're saying. We were planning on seeing Company, which is the show Patty LuPone is starring in. And when that story hit last week, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that.
I always thought that Patty LuPone, I mean, to the extent that I know anything about the woman, she always seemed like sort of a regal grand dame sort of a thing.
Diva.
Yeah. But she looked like the nastiest shrew of a person in that clip. Like just everything that's awful about that loud, fat neighbor down the street you don't want to talk to.
Whenever you hear about somebody being a Broadway diva, it's often the case that personality comes along with it. Think Bette Midler, right?
Yeah, it's that
Ethel Merman.
It's body thing. Yeah. It's like, why is there no elegance to them? I would just think they'd be a little more. I mean, it's fine to be a bitch, but why you got to be such a?
I'll tell you the one exception, and she is a genuine Broadway diva and a genuine sweetheart, is Bernadette Peters. Bernadette Peters is not like she is classy and she is elegant. Glenn Close was very classy when I worked with her too, by the way. She was.
I would expect my celebrities and stars to be demanding or high maintenance, but I would also like to think of them as having an elegance about it while they are. I don't know if that's silly or not, but
it is. Well, no, it's not. It's the least we should expect. And she has that reputation, though. I was telling this story on the air the other day that before this, she actually, if you Google it, if you use the Google, years ago, not too many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, she was doing a production of Gypsy, and she stopped the show in the middle of the show and started yelling at the audience because they were taking a video on their cell phones. So, I mean, this is just a thing she does.
So, in other words, it sounds a lot like a guy who hosts a cable news show talking about Senate primaries.
You know what? Yes, it does. Although it's actually more akin to, it's become a thing now. It's like, the first time Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman break up laughing at something Tim Conway does, it's, it's funny and it's spontaneous, but then it's expected.
Oh, do you think it's like her brand now?
Yes. Now you tune in, you show up, and maybe tonight Patty LuPone will tell the audience to go fuck themselves.
So do you think that her screaming and yelling and swearing is meant to go viral?
Oh yeah. It's a yes queen moment. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Sadly. All right. So back to you. You're interning, you're doing music radio. You're producing this guy, you're getting your degree, and then you graduate. You continue on this guy's morning music station? Is that the
I
situation?
I do. There
Now
was there was a
yeah.
brief window where I got an internship one fall. I took a semester off college, and I got an internship with Late Show with David Letterman.
Ah.
And the radio guy that I mentioned happened to be an enormous Letterman fan. So I can't even begin to tell you. I had this weird moment where, as a kid who idolized two people in my life, this morning guy and the guy on television, Letterman.
Yeah.
The guy on the radio was a huge fan of Letterman's. So my stock immediately went through the roof with the radio guy, because I was now in the inner sanctum of Letterman, right? And so it all kind of fed off of each other. And by the time I got back from Letterman and graduated from college, the guy, I wasn't just a stupid kid anymore. He actually really, he sort of valued my input.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure. You were you were somebody. You were a thing. You
I
weren't just
I
a good luck kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those things. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but there was something about it that I actually interviewed him for a podcast very recently. Actually, Randy Miller.
That's cool.
I hadn't spoken to him in years, and I brought him back on the podcast to tell him about this. And he said to me, he goes, I worked with a lot of kids, and I had a lot of interns over the years, and it was very, very clear, no matter where I was going or whether I was going to be any good at it or not. He said it was abundantly clear how much you loved doing it. No, he said, I'd never worked around anybody who loved doing it like you loved doing it. And that for me was the greatest compliment, because that's what I felt. There was just nothing I cared about more. Nothing.
Do you still feel it?
Not like that. My identity was tied up in it then. I cared more about it than anything else. And I have had to disabuse myself of that. I mean, that led to a very unhappy life. I mean, when you make this business your end all be all on your identity, it will fail you. It will let you down, and it will send you to some very dark places. So I had to navigate that for a while.
I want to talk about that a little later, if you're open to talking about it. I don't want to get too into detail on it, but I want to say, I never met Randy Miller, never heard of. I might check. I'm sure there are air checks on,
I'd love
YouTube.
for you to meet him. You'd love him.
Sounds great. But when I hear you, I've always heard this in your delivery, in the way you interview, in the way you present yourself on the air. And I always wrote it off to Midwest. You've got the Midwest cadence, which, by the way, I want to talk about that too, and how your Midwest approach has worked in Philadelphia, because it clearly has. And I don't think most people would have predicted that. But set that aside for a minute. When I hear you, I hear Letterman. I think Letterman's influence on your broadcast style is immeasurable. And I'm saying that, I'm not saying you're copying. I'm not saying it's derivative. I'm saying it is clear that he has had an inspirational influence on you. And I think, frankly, you're much more charming and likable than Letterman, because he was always, even when he did his thing, it was likable, but it was likable in a way that you knew he didn't like you.
Yeah.
But I see it and I love it. Because I loved Letterman too, and I think you have figured out a way to sort of bring out the best parts of Letterman and still not be an asshole. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. I often wondered about Letterman being somebody that I admired so much that I know what you mean, and I know that it's true, and I've watched and listened to him for so long that I actually have worried over the years, like, I sound like a guy that's trying to copy him? Like, do people watching go, okay, I get it, you're trying to be Letterman. But I think after a while, you just sort of, I don't know, the affectations or whatever, they become your own, they kind of meld, you find your own voice, but you still hang on to your favorite parts of them. And undoubtedly it's true. And I still, to this day, just delight in watching certain things he'll do. Him and Jerry Seinfeld talking just tickles me to no end. It's just, it's so wonderful. They'll be sitting in a diner, and Letterman will look around and he'll say, who are these people? And, Jerry will say, they're just people, Dave. They're just here eating. And and Jerry would say, we don't own the place, Dave. And then, Dave would say, well, we can do something about that, can't we?
Right.
It's just, I don't know. There's just stuff like that to me, he's still so damned funny at his core, and I hate that he turned bitter and political.
Well,
Most people did.
so
But
let me pull on that thread because
yeah.
the reason I raise it is because one of the first things that you wrote, it may have been the first thing you wrote at Big Hollywood. Forgive me if it isn't, but I remember reading you at Big Hollywood, the original Andrew Breitbart site, was about Letterman. You were sort of lamenting
Mm.
that Letterman had gone so political and
Yeah.
how it sounded. I remember reading it saying, because it resonated with me. I was a huge Letterman fan too, incredibly influential. And I could tell it hurt you. I mean, it wounded you that he did this.
Deeply. I wanted to believe that he just didn't care enough about. I always thought that power was not impressive to him, and that people in power, no matter who they were always foolish, or could be potentially foolish. He was
Yeah.
never. There was a quote. I had an unhealthy fixation with Letterman in college, and in fact, I kept every single. I would maintain just about every single cover of every magazine he was ever on.
Jeez.
And I laminated them.
Oh my God.
And decorated my room with them. I mean, I was fixated on the man. I just stylistically, I mean, I remember when he hosted the Oscars in 1998.
Oh my God.
I studied it because I wanted to be exactly like him. I mean, I'm not kidding. I everything about him. I did a television show in college that I modeled exactly after his show.
Cut to Stigall in his basement with Letterman in a dugout pit, and Stigall saying, "It rubs the lotion on its skin. It rubs its lotion on its skin."
I won't hurt you. I won't hurt you.
A little disturbed right now.
I won't hurt you. It's okay, Dave. I won't hurt you. No, so I was not well. Parents thought about counseling. People wondered if I was straight, all those things.
So
but
is there a lesson in this for like we were talking earlier about some of the hubris you see on cable news right now, and it's even manifest in almost like an angry hectoring to the audience, and that's what Letterman turned into.
Well, yeah, and that was my point was that I never saw him as anything other than just this remarkable, witty, acerbic guy who spoke out to powerful people. He, my favorite quote that I ever read about him was, he never cried in the kitchen with Oprah. He never cried on Oprah. He never posed in the kitchen for People magazine. He ignored all the rules and won anyway. I loved that. And that was always who I thought he was. And what saddened me was when I saw him starting to suck up to powerful people like Democrats, like Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And the Clintons before that. I just thought, gosh, you're kissing up to powerful people. Like, I didn't know that was who you were. You were the guy that was making fun of the suits. And so, yeah, that's when my heart was kind of broken. Like, he was more interested in hobnobbing and being a socialite or a political guy. And I don't know. I'll just say I finally got that internship. And full disclosure, I was the intern with his writers, which was like, you kidding? I mean, I was.
Oh yeah,
it was the closest thing I could get to him. I got to run scripts and be around him, and I was probably the closest thing to him. And it couldn't have been a more disappointing experience.
Yeah.
Because everyone was just so surly and cranky and unhappy, and they were just really a miserable bunch of people. And I came home back to the Midwest from that experience in New York, just thinking, that was my dream. And man, don't meet your heroes is a real thing.
And yet again, a great lesson, because when you run your own, it's a much smaller staff and a smaller operation, God knows, but you are the sort of the lead of a team when you do a morning talk radio show. Mm-hmm. And I clearly no one is ever going to walk away from working with Chris Stigall, either as an intern or a producer or a board op or a call screen or whatever, and say, what a miserable, surly experience that was, right? I mean, that's
well, I don't know. I can lose my temper and I can be exacting, but I would like to think that it's never for too long. It's always of a moment, and there's always an apology if I ever do. And I always say how important someone is to me or how helpful they are to me or thank you. Right. Making sure you ask about them and how their day is and how their life's going. Just simple things that show you're human. You'll be excused for a lot if if you're just human to people.
And
That's
if
the
not,
part that's
we'll
missing.
surely find out in the comment section a little later on here from the
No,
people
I'd like
you've
to.
worked with.
I'm cranky, but I think everybody who does what we do is cranky at times.
Can
Aren't
I
you
tell you?
cranky sometimes?
Sometimes I am, and I got to tell you, it's funny. When I first started, what's the guy's name who hosts Family Feud now? And he does radio, and he's
Steve
done
Harvey?
Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
So I heard stories. People who work at WMAL, one person I can't remember who it was, had worked on the Steve Harvey show. And someone had said, at the studio, there's a rule: you're not allowed to make eye contact with Steve Harvey whenever he's walking around. If he's going to get coffee, he's going to the bathroom. If he's walking down the hall, you don't make eye contact with him. If he talks to you, you talk to him. But if you don't just initiate a conversation with him. And it's like, oh my God, I never want to be that guy. I never want to be that. However, I gotta say, after doing it for several years, I kind of get it a little bit. I would never put down that edict, but if you're on a break, if you've got 5 minutes and you've got to go to the bathroom, get your coffee, and you're already in your head thinking about the next segment you're about to do or the interview you're about to do, and you're still working. And so I wonder if it's been taken out of context.
Yes.
That Steve Harvey has just been said, you know what, I can't talk to you right now. I'm working still. And don't get in my way because I'm focused on what I'm doing. Because I have found myself having to do that sometimes.
Well, I don't care at this point. I guess I can talk about this. Letterman, you had to clear the hall. At 2:00, he was going to rehearsal from the 14th floor of the building, 12th floor. And if you were on the 12th floor at 2:00, you better not be in the hall, because he was going to exit his office. He was going to walk down the hall, and he was going to go to an elevator door that was held for him.
Jeez.
And if there was anyone in the way, you were going to be in trouble. You didn't talk to him. You didn't block the hall. You didn't make conversation. There was none of that. I mean, that was the understanding. I mean, everything was on a rigid schedule, and you better clear when he comes through. And do I understand that at all? Here's maybe where I think you were going. I would never be like an avert your eyes or, stay out of the hallway guy. But it can be emotionally and mentally very, very draining to do certainly 3 and 4 hours of live radio. And I do a couple of shows a day, and I'm not whining. We're blessed to do the job. It's just that if you care about it and you give it everything you got and you're thinking fast and you're trying to be entertaining, you need a moment to be quiet. You need people that respect the quiet. And that's when you can't have people wanting more from you, because if you're doing your job well, you feel like you've just given everything you've got to the show.
Right. You put it out there. Yeah.
And so it feels like people sometimes might be taking what little shred you have left. And it's like, I don't have anything left and I don't want to be a monster. So I'd really rather not talk. Right. And because that's the thing I often say, it isn't anything personal. It's not that I think I'm better. It's that I don't think you're going to like me when I start talking anyway. So let's just save it.
Let's just cut to the chase.
That's really honestly, that's the way I feel. And I've struggled with that all my life, because I don't feel better or superior to anyone. I always am assuming that people will come away going, what a dick.
Yeah.
And so I just rather not. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. It makes total sense. And I get it, but I also get how people can then take that and turn it into
what a dick.
Monster. Yeah.
Anyway, isn't that funny? I like you want to avoid seeming like a jerk, and then you end up coming off as a jerk because you don't want to chat.
Well, and it's also very funny because if you and I have very similar styles, where when we're on radio, I think it doesn't look like we're doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it looks like it's just very casual, conversational kind of approach to it, which makes it seem like, when the red light goes off, the conversation continues. And it's like, well, no, actually, no. But I can understand why people want to jump in there.
I remember there's an old timey story about Jack Benny. I don't know who told it. I don't know if it was a Carson story or what. Jack Benny, the great old comic and actor, almost vaudevillian and radio, early TV.
All the way back to vaudeville, you bet.
Like in his older years, he would supposedly, the story goes, he would be backstage before he's called out from behind the curtain. And he was kind of this husk of a guy, kind of hunched over, quiet. And then as they're saying, and now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Jack Benny, he would inflate, he'd walk out, he'd deliver, and then go back behind that curtain and
Yeah.
and didn't talk. And I can't remember who told that story, but that was the word that the guy was like, he looked almost incapacitated and sad,
Yeah.
but he would puff up
Showtime.
to deliver that show, and then that was
Yeah.
all he had. That was all he could do.
So one last question on Letterman, and then I want to get back to your career. And is this boring you out of your skull? Do you have to be places? What are you doing?
I can't imagine anybody else is entertained, but I'm fine.
All
I
right.
think I have to go in about 15 minutes.
15. Oh, damn it. All right. So real fast on Letterman. Well, you know what? One of the
Hang on. Let me ask. Hey, honey, Christine, when do we need to be where we need to be? We're live with Larry O'Connor.
Hello, Christine.
What time do we need to be where we need to be? We have to be there at 5.
Oh,
all right.
crap.
Well, then, yeah, I guess 15, 20 minutes.
All right.
Then.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fabulous. I miss you.
Oh, super. Hello.
Super.
Come over here. Come over and say hello. Christine and I are hosting a new podcast, you know.
I've heard all about. Look at you. I miss you so much.
Larry, how are you?
You look fabulous. I'm okay. I mean, I'm talking to Chris, so how good can I be?
Can you hear him?
No.
Can't hear him.
Oh, I said I'm okay, but I'm talking to your husband, so how good can I be, really?
Well, now I'm here, so I guess it gets a little bit better then, right?
Congratulations on the new podcast. I heard all about it. It's
Thank
all
you.
about the education choices you're making for your children and how challenging it is and how rewarding. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Thank you so much. We're really excited. We're just having a lot of fun with it. And
That's actually where we're going. We're going to kiss up to the guy on the board of the organization that pays us to do that show.
Always a good plan.
Yeah.
It is.
I'll
let you get back to your live going.
All right. It's good to see you.
Yep. Love saying hi. Bye.
What a saint that woman is. An absolute saint.
All right.
I'll never forget why we can't tell the story, but I remember one night when we were out very late in Pennsylvania at a dinner and drinking might have been involved. And you said quite possibly one of the most offensive jokes off. It's not like you said, hey, I've got enough. It was just, we riff. Believe it or not, Chris and I sort of we basically do a show all night and our wives are just, it's awful.
Yeah. And back when I was really liquored up, I mean, that was, turned it up to a 10.
You made a joke and I heard, and Christina said, Christopher, like that.
Yeah, that's when you know it's the evening's over.
I wet my pants. I was terrified when she said that. And I will always think of her that way. Christopher.
Yeah, that means there's trouble.
So here's the thing. I'm going to pitch you right now. I've sort of pitched you on this before. Yeah. So people need to know in our final 12 minutes together here that Stigall and I have been threatening to do something together, some sort of something forever. I mean, this is honestly our dream at some point. We're going to be, it's going to be like the Sunshine Boys. We're going to be two old men at a retirement home.
You know,
doing, yeah.
we would have killed him in Boca.
So, and I've pitched you on this bit, and I'm going to throw it out to you again because the Letterman thing has reminded me. One of my favorite things about Letterman was how subversive he was in making fun of the medium of talk shows itself. But much of what he did, I mean, that's why it was so disappointing when he took himself so seriously, because up until the final few years, he knew that the format itself was part of the joke, right?
Yes.
And sort of in the spirit of Phil Hendry, but not nearly as subversive as Phil Hendry, I always thought it would be a blast if you and I did some kind of comedy satire approach of talk radio, of podcasting, where
not quite WKRP.
No, but certainly a hat tip to WKRP.
Yeah.
And I think podcasting allows you to sort of do that, especially since, I just think it's ripe for comedy. And nobody's doing it. Nobody's really doing that right now. Sort of a breaking the fourth wall, peek behind the curtain, laughing at ourselves.
It's true, but I will say there is one show that clearly has radio influence, or people that write for it come from radio, and that's Family Guy. Family Guy, I don't know how often you watch it, but over the years, Family Guy has done homages to radio and podcasting. That's true. Pretty funny. So I will give them credit, but yeah.
But the more I think about it, the more I think it would just be fun, even if it's just a once-a-week podcast exercise that just you and I would laugh at.
Which is generally the case with most of us.
Which is generally the case, yes, it is. So I mean, I guess I have so much more I wanted to talk to you about.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to rush you.
No, it's my fault. We got off on tangents and we talked about politics. real fast. Hold on, I'm getting a private chat here, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing something.
Uh-oh.
From our.
This is the worst show you've ever done.
Oh, we're
Signed,
yeah,
Meredith.
pretty much that's where we are. We never found out, by the way, whose mom makes Ethan watch listen to our shows. So I'm sorry, Ethan.
Yeah.
By the way.
His mother's forcing him to listen to one of us.
Real fast in our final few minutes here, just in terms of the future of the medium, because you're on in Philadelphia. You wake everybody up there. You do a morning show there on Salem. You actually do a second show in Kansas City for Cumulus. You've also got your podcast. Now you've got a second podcast you're doing with your wife. I only lay that out in that you obviously recognize that this kind of spoken word content is the thing right now. Everybody's doing. I love that we're content creators. I love that ridiculous euphemism or whatever it is. But this ain't going away, right? I mean, this is. Can you imagine where this format and what we're doing is going to be like 5 years from now? Is there even a chance? Well, let me ask you. I'll ask you this way: why would anyone still subscribe to satellite radio?
I've always felt like there's always room for Jell-O, right? I mean, there's just to me, more is never a bad thing. I just ask the ladies that used to sell me bourbon. If a little's good, why isn't a lot better? I feel like content, the more that's available, the more YouTube, the more Rumble, the more satellite, the more radio, the more internet. Just bring it. And may the cream of the crop rise. And
that's the question, though. I jokingly say everybody's got a podcast whenever I need to promote someone's podcast when they're a guest on the show, because literally, anybody can have a podcast. Does the watering down of that content and sort of because let's face it, not everybody should have a podcast.
No, and look, I wouldn't. No one would listen to my podcast if I didn't have a radio show that preceded it for 20-something years. I know that. Like, I'm not, I don't think so highly of myself that I'm so good that if nobody had ever listened to me before and I sat out in a room and started doing this, I would be must-listen programming. No, I built a reputation in traditional broadcasting. And for that, I'm blessed and fortunate. And so I was able to leapfrog over the work that it takes for someone who really has never done this before to invest their time and hard work. So who impresses me is someone who can enter this space now and explode in popularity. Now that's talent. And that I don't have. I don't have that. I readily admit I couldn't do it today. I would not survive today if left to my own devices to just start a podcast. There's no way.
I used to say with streaming and Spotify and YouTube and all the streaming that's going on and all the podcasts and everything, and everyone's saying, broadcast radio is dead. Broadcast radio is dead. And they've been saying broadcast radio is dead for, decades now. They said broadcast radio was dead when television came up on the scene, and radio somehow survives.
And it will. I believe it will always survive, at least what we're doing in the morning. Particularly
live morning broadcast radio.
Always.
That's the key. And because everyone says, well, you can just stream a podcast when you're sitting here. It's not live.
It's not live.
It's not happening now.
In fact, there's a radio show locally. It's interesting. I just heard a radio news wheel. What's called a news wheel. That's the radio station that does, traffic on the twos. And
give us every 22 minutes and we'll give you the juice.
All the headlines of the day. And you know what they say? It's really quite brilliant. I'd never heard it until recently. Coming up in 3 minutes, here's what you won't get on a podcast. And then they tease all the stories. And
I'm stealing that.
They're actually taking shots at the podcast scene.
I am stealing that. I love that. Yeah.
They say, here's what you can't get from a podcast. That's what they say.
On 2 weeks ago on a Monday night, we went to sleep checking our Twitter feed, and we saw that a leaked draft of a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade had been leaked to Politico. And I assure you, the next morning, as everyone was driving in, nobody was tuning into their favorite podcast.
Nope.
Because no one had that story. And we all had it on Morning Drive.
And, Donald Trump coming on the show to talk one last time about Dr. Oz before we have a 3-way tie primary and who's going to vote for whom, and the polls open at 7. Like, Donald Trump popping on my show in the morning, drive time in Philadelphia. You can't. Donald Trump does podcasts, yes.
Yeah.
But not real time day of important.
Not with that urgency.
shows.
And that, by the way, that's where that intimacy that you mentioned earlier comes back. And that's where it's on. So yes, as the format changes and as new delivery systems come in and new people come in and it gets spread out and watered down and ubiquitous, the last people to turn out the lights at your local radio station will be the morning man in a big city. That's CHRIS STIGALL in Philadelphia. And God willing, it's me in DC. That's why we keep doing what we're doing.
Yep. I want to say something, just because, and this is in all sincerity. You should know, if you're a fan of Larry O'Connor's, you're watching one of the most decent guys you're ever going to meet. And he and his wife, Meredith, are not only dear friends of mine. We've had some tremendous conversations, honestly, and we didn't even get into this. I'd love to do a whole nother show on our spiritual lives someday.
I wanted to talk about your journey and your faith, because I love talking about that's very nice of you to say.
Well, maybe we can do it again. But I was sitting in a sermon just this last weekend, and I made this note, and I just loved it. I've been sharing it on my podcast. I shared it today. Don't give up the opportunity to share the good news because you're highlighting something you perceive to be bad news.
Oh, wow.
Don't give up the opportunity to share the good news because you're highlighting something you perceive to be bad news. I felt like he was preaching directly to me as a guy who spends most of his time peddling in nothing but what I perceive to be bad news, right?
That's great.
So I know that you are a pretty consistently positive guy, and that's in person, in your private life, but I think you put out a lot of positivity, and I don't know how expressly you talk about your faith, but I very, very much admire the fact that you are a hopeful person, and you offer some light and hope in a pretty bleak time, candidly.
I think it's fair to say that we are both blessed with women in our lives, our wives, who make it a little bit easier to see some hope.
Amen.
These days. So thank you. That's very kind of you. And for those of you who don't know, Chris was actually part of my wedding. He was my best man, and so it means a lot to me to hear that from you. All right, enough of you. Get out of here. Go suck up to your philanthropy.
My next paycheck.
And we'll look forward to hearing your analysis tomorrow on the big Dr. Oz victory in Pennsylvania.
It probably will be. I mean, if you're asking me to place a bet, I suspect it's going to be Dr. Oz, Senator Oz. And by the way, if it is, he will kick John Fetterman's ass.
Well,
I don't even think it's going to be close, and so we will have Senator Oz. What a strange! You'd think, wouldn't that be more fitting in Kansas?
Yes, it would. Exactly. You're not in Kansas anymore. All right, son. Good to see you.
Love you, Larry O'Connor.
I love you too. Let's do this again soon, okay? And thanks for doing it. All right. That's CHRIS STIGALL, boys and girls. Go do your thing, Chris. Love that guy, really do. And that's it for me today. It's what is it? It's 7:30 now, 90 minutes in, and it's 7:30 in the East Coast. And I'm going to go do what you're going to do, which is try to watch these returns in Pennsylvania, because it's fascinating to watch. And hopefully all of the cable news hosts that we just trashed earlier in the stream will get great ratings tonight, because I love them all. I want to remind you all, if you could share this around and let people know sort of what listen, this is an acquired taste for some people, I know, but I'm assuming that you enjoy some fun, intelligent conversations with pretty fun, intelligent people. I know I do. That's why I bring fun, intelligent people on, to make me look good. And I love doing it. And we're trying to grow what we're doing. So if you can subscribe and like and share and do all those things that you're supposed to do. And ultimately, as I realize now, I've kept this scrolling the entire time. But yes, join our locals community. It's free. It's joining just like you would join any other social media. The difference is we don't have any big tech gurus in Silicon Valley censoring what we say. You can share and say whatever you want in locals on anybody's page. And yes, there is some paid content if you want some exclusive members content. And you can use the code Larry YT if you're watching us on YouTube, Larry FB for Facebook, Larry TW for Twitter. And if you're not watching on any of those things, then Larry FU is the way to go. I don't know why. Thank you guys for being a part of what we do here, and we'll continue. I think we have a do we have a Thursday live stream set yet, folks? Can we? I might bring Sarah. Sarah, turn your camera on, Sarah? I'll bring you in right now. See, oh, there she is. Look at that.
Yeah.
She's ready to go.
Hi.
Sarah,
No,
the
we
queen
don't
of
have a
locals content here, the queen of our locals and Facebook content. Sarah, we have nothing. Oh, hey, here's to you. What does that say? Drunk wives matter. Oh, that's beautiful. Love that.
Cheers.
And look
My
at that.
favorite White
Montgomery County, Maryland is looking gorgeous right now.
Mhm.
I wish I could show you what Annapolis is looking like right now, but I'm not allowed. I've been admonished. We have nothing scheduled for Thursday?
No. We
So the book club situation is not I've read the book. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, they're non-responsive now. But we've been going through like phases of non-responsiveness.
Correct. I understand.
You and I can chat off air about the conversation I had with Jeff earlier. But
understood. Well, let's
that is delayed, but we do have I don't want to do these backwards. Jack Carr and Brad Thor are both lined up for June and July.
Great. Okay.
So,
and let me try to get Julio Rosa. I mean, we did a live. I'll be doing another live stream tomorrow or Thursday during the day. It's locals only. We'll do some.
We can get Julio, and we'll do a book club on Thursday.
Maybe
with
we
Julio.
can do Julio on Thursday.
That'd be fun.
I think we can do that. So
Okay.
let me effort that. We'll have Julio Rosas with his book.
Excellent. Oh, my mouth is already wine red.
His book, fiery but mostly peaceful, about the riots of 2020. We'll do that. And yes, we are planning on bringing Amber Athey in. Hold on. P. Murray Ferris wants us to. We are definitely going to have Amber Athey in. I assure you, she's going to be. We're building up to that.
Mm-hmm.
We are building up to that. People are going to be waiting for a little bit, but she has now launched her YouTube podcast. I want to come on her YouTube podcast, and then we're going to have her on our thing. And don't trust me, Amber. We have a open door for Amber, and we're planning on doing that. I assure you. All right, you guys are great talking with you today. Thanks for being a part of this. And go watch the election results. And Sarah, you behave yourself.
Senator Oz. Is that what Chris said? Senator
That's
Oz?
what he said. I actually think McCormick's going to thread the needle on this. But you have a prediction?
I don't.
Here's the thing. Hardly any of the smart money conventional wisdom is guessing Kathy Barnett. So that's probably exactly who will win.
The dark horse, is that what it's called? No, I just learned that from Chris. It's okay to say I don't know, but I'll get that information for you.
Exactly. It's very powerful to be able to say that. That's right. Oh, by the way, go over to our town hall. I've been doing daily sort of video bits that we should. I think they're up at locals. I don't know if they are or not. I'm waiting for them to post them on YouTube. But we're doing daily fun commentary, sort of in the style of a Daily Show segment. And I'd love your feedback on them. But go check it out. Today we did one on Kamala Harris. And was that today? No, that was yesterday. Today we did one on Chuck Schumer refusing to go on Tucker Carlson's show. Go check it out. We'll post it up at locals as well. And I'm out of here. Goodbye. Why stop messing with me. Take care. Good night. Right?